This exercise is our clamshell progressions. Now, if you have a hard time rotating your hips, so say for instance, we tried testing your hip rotation and there's really nothing there, like we don't have any freedom to get those hips to rotate, or when you try to follow through or load up, those hips just have a hard time twisting or turning like they're supposed to, this is a great way to isolate that hip joint. So that thigh bone, where it meets the hip socket, we're going to try to rotate that joint and specifically focus on just that. So Kelsey's going to demonstrate the first progression, which is the open clam. You're going to keep your feet together. The knees are about 90 degrees and your feet should be lined up with your spine. If you're by yourself and you're not sure if you're lined up, do this against a wall. If your spine and feet are on the wall, then you're lined up. And what she's doing is just simply bringing that knee up without rolling your hips back. So we're going to show the wrong way real quick. Go and roll those hips back. Your pelvis should not roll back at all. So if you're not sure, or if you feel like you are doing that, take your top hand and place it right above the hip, right above the glute, and don't let that hip roll back. So use that hand to hold that position and only lift that thigh bone. 10 to 20 reps is sufficient. If this gets too easy, get a light TheraBand or resistance band and place it around the knees, either below or above, and do the same drill to add some resistance to this. But for most people starting out, 20 reps of this, it's going to burn, and that's sufficient to teach that hip how to rotate better. So this is our first progression. The second one is keeping the knees together and lifting the lower leg only as high as it'll go, and then back to its foot. And then kind of the opposite, instead of rolling back, I don't want her hips rolling forward, so she's going to keep that hand there just as a feedback mechanism to tell her if she's moving those hips too much. And all we're doing is taking that thigh bone and rotating it internally. So again, 20 reps per set. If this got too easy, get a light resistance band, because it won't take much to make this more difficult. Place it right above the ankles and do the same movement, okay? And then our third progression is to lift this knee about the width of your fist, so like right there, hold that thigh bone in place and do that second progression once more, keeping that thigh bone in space right where it's at. Let the feet try to touch and try to rotate that thigh bone to lift that lower leg. If you did one set of 20 with the knees, 20 with the feet, and this third variation with the leg up in the air a little bit, and that hip is going to burn. One set of 20 is sufficient per side. And this is our clamshell progression.